Hey everyone, this is Mark. How you doing? So today for the blog, I want to talk about organic food and some of the challenges and the fraud and other things issuing with it. Because a lot of us are thinking, hey, I'll just buy organic food at the grocery store, and that'll be better. And the answer is it's probably not. Okay. Now there is following this course as normal. I have a complete research paper on this, but you gotta see that the USDA, right? And they've done a great job here. They've got stringent guidelines to what is classified as organic foods in the United States. And so all of the um, food producers are supposed to follow these regulations. But the problem is that there are specific requirements for sustainable and eco-friendly practices, such as the use of organic fertilizers and the avoidance of synthetic chemicals. But understand, that doesn't mean that they're not using pesticides, that they're not using um, fertilizers and other things. They're just called organic, right? And so that may not be the answer to getting rid of pesticides and some of the fertilizers that are in the crops. Okay, there's also a lot of regulations on how the stuff's supposed to be made and to provide that there is integrity and purity of the organic foods. And so U.S. organic foods are usually pretty good. And there is a certification process that every one of the farmers and food producers has to go through to get that organic label. So, U.S. food, probably a good choice, organic, right? The problem is going to be that uh, the food industry has got a challenge because most of our food is coming, or a lot of our food, not most, a lot of our food is coming from overseas, right? And there are, and even within the USDA jurisdiction, right, the US, there are loopholes and policy provisions that were made to help agribusiness exploit this label without actually providing you healthy, wholesome food, right? So you gotta be careful about that. So obviously we dealing with different countries, and just south of our border, right, in Mexico and South America and the rest of Central America. Well, there are great discrepancies on what they consider regulatory controls, right? There's concerns about the authenticity of imported foods listed as organic. I mean, how organic is it really? There's lots of fraud, non-compliance with U.S. standards in there because they don't have to follow them in their home countries, and these present a lot of threats to consumer safety. So these are just things you need to be aware of, right? Okay. Currently, there are many lawsuits filed against by farmers that highlight a lot of the flaws and how that the organic certification process is really geared towards big agribusiness and not to small farmers, which we would like to see get protected. And remember, it's who's got the lobbying bucks, right? Um, there are um, uh, these producer groups or grower groups in developing countries are just notorious with the fraud and non-compliance. So they'll say, "Oh, sure, it's organic, but is it really? They just sprayed it with glyphosate, herbicide, and it's one of the things we definitely want to get rid of. So you gotta watch out for that and make sure you know exactly where the food was grown. Demands for stricter enforcement, of course, is very high, but that's a budget issue, right? You have to have people and labs and all kinds of stuff, and we're just not. The government's just not in the mood for doing that sort of stuff. And then, of course, there's just the problem of enforcing it, as with anything else. Uh, how many inspectors are you going to really hire? How many of them are going to look at every single one? How many of them are going to go to these other countries and see how the stuff's actually grown? The amount of people we have employed to enforce uh, food standards of any kind in our system is very small. Very small percentage ever gets truly inspected, anyways, and even less for organic. Right? It's really hard. So remember, gotta be careful. A lot of product gets mislabeled as organic, so a lot of people can put on an organic label that's not the USDA organic label, and you might think it's organic, and it has nothing to do with it. So they're mislabeled, they're fraudulent. Uh, there are groups in other countries where we're importing stuff from who uh, are under no scrutiny, right? And there are lots of adulterated ingredients. So the biggest one that I know of is, for example, when you buy if you're buying olive oil, and I personally don't suggest buying olive oil anymore, simply because almost any olive oil you buy at the grocery store is probably not pure olive oil. It's probably heavily adulterated with uh, industrial seed oils that you don't want to buy because they're making a ton of money. And you're talking, especially the imported ones, and it may say it's coming from Italy. Well, the oil was packaged in Italy, but it was grown in Algeria, for example, or Tunisia or someplace where they might not have the same controls that the Italian farmers have to go through. So you have to be careful with that. Be careful with how they're being sold, where they're coming from, and how they're put together, right? So there are enforcement challenges, legal battles, proposed solutions, and you'll see some of these things are outlined in my research paper. But basically, the biggest thing is the impact of fraud is very high in the organic food industry. Don't trust what's on the market. Now, this is where I will say that the one thing you need to really look at is get to know who you're buying your food from. I really love buying food from local ranchers and local farmers at I can meet at the farmers market, where I can really talk to them about how they're growing their food, about how they process it, and find out what they're doing with it, and that they're ethically raising their animals, and that they're using regenerative farming practices, which is a whole topic I'll be discussing. But the idea is, uh, don't trust that there's a government looking after you on the food. Go find out who's actually growing the food and talk to them and buy it from them if at all possible. Support your local farmers markets. That's my big thing here. Okay, and then obviously it'd be great if we had stricter regulations, robust enforcement, transparency from the growers, and independent certification. None of these things truly exist at the moment, and as such, you really can't say that organic food is everything it's cracked up to be. Okay, so um, be careful where you're buying your food. It may not be exactly what you think it is.